On this week's Carrier App, we'll look at some of the top news items from across the past week, including some of the unlimited data talk from AT&T and Verizon, as well as Sprint's backhaul plans, as well as speak with Roger Entner from Recon Analytics about the upcoming spectrum auctions. Well, thanks for joining us for this week's Carrier App. I'm your host, Dan Meyer, Editor-in-Chief here at RCR Wireless News. Joining me this week is our Managing Editor, Sean Kinney. Hey, Sean, thanks for joining us this week. We appreciate it.
Dan, always a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Well, obviously a lot of news in the carrier space over the past week. I know there was some investor conferences last week, which are always, well, I don't say always, but they can be interesting. It's always kind of interesting to hear what the investor side wants to know from the carriers. And I know out of the conferences last week, there was quite a bit of talk that came out about unlimited data. I know AT&T recently relaunched its unlimited data services, and at one of the conferences, the AT&T CFO had mentioned that they'd already signed up 2 million customers over the past couple of months to that offering, which is pretty impressive considering they haven't really pushed it too much. And more importantly for AT&T, that the service is tied to customers also signing up for the DirecTV or the Uverse video service. So pretty interesting, I guess, way to kind of link those together, and also showing consumers still want unlimited data out there, which was interesting. Also, I guess it kind of, a bit counterpoint to Verizon at the same conference mentioning that they were not really looking to get back in the unlimited data game at this point, saying it's not really, doesn't make sense for LTE. I don't know for yourself, Sean, what you thought maybe of kind of that, I guess, that kind of different views on unlimited data at this point.
Yeah, well, I think this is a really strategic move for AT&T because, as you said, it's clear that the customer demand is there. So we have to ask ourselves now, okay, so how is it to AT&T's advantage to offer this? Well, AT&T, unlike some of their competitors, actually has in market some pretty well-defined Internet of Things products. Their AT&T Drive connected car platform, for instance, has about 7 million connections right now, and that's growing pretty steadily. Mm-hmm. Similarly, AT&T has their whole suite of smart home automation and security products, Digital Life. So they want you to buy all of these other products that require a cellular connection. So how are you going to not sweat the data that's associated with all these new connections? You're going to get unlimited data. So I think that really is a strong value proposition for AT&T and really does kind of bolster up what they're doing around IoT products, particularly consumer facing. But you got to also bear in mind that when you offer unlimited data, you kind of open yourself up for more network congestion and management challenges, as I think we learned from T-Mobile binge on, right? They have to, in order to offer the unlimited streaming, they have to kick the quality down a little bit so that their network can handle all of the data that's going over it. So I think what AT&T is doing, to my wit at least, is sort of signaling what you're going to see the other carriers do as the IoT really does start to take shape, and you see a lot of consumer adoption of wearable devices and smart home devices and things like that. At some point, it's going to be impossible for regular people to afford this unless they have the unlimited data option.
Yeah, that's a great point. You're right. I didn't think about it. I mean, yeah, obviously AT&T's got a lot of different services out there. A lot of them are tapping into the cellular network. And you're right, for customers to want to start taking those, they do have to have a little bit of certainty about what their data usage is going to be and not have to worry about overages. And even the AT&T guy, the CFO, had mentioned at the investors conference that, that he's seeing in general kind of customers are spending $200 to $300, $400 per month on their services now when it comes to AT&T. So AT&T is definitely doing a pretty good job of bundling things together. Obviously, unlimited cellular is going to be a big part of that. So yeah, pretty interesting. And again, they've got, it seems like, the platform to do this as well. They've got enough of these extra services out there and a pretty good reach where the likes of Verizon, which Verizon is trying to kind of expand a bit, but definitely a much broader reach for AT&T in terms of IoT, connected car, things like that than their rivals are. So yeah, for AT&T, they're kind of perhaps leading this new charge. And again, they're linking these things together. So if customers want unlimited data, they do have to pick these other services too, which is an interesting way to kind of get people to, look at what else they're offering. So, I think it's very innovative from AT&T. And again, they're doing a lot on the software side to make it more efficient on their network too, kind of like what Ben John is with T-Mobile there. So, very interesting that what they're doing. And again, with Verizon saying that they're not going to bring unlimited data back. We'll see how long that lasts because again, now AT&T at least offers it to an extent. T-Mobile is obviously still pushing their unlimited data. Sprint still has their unlimited data. Verizon's always a bit of an outlier when it comes to new services. So we'll see what they do here, but interesting to see at least, kind of where we are at this point at least.
Yeah, I would reckon that Sprint will kind of stay in this lane for a little while. And then, what a better time to pull that promotion back out and put it on the table than when maybe you have a new product or service that you're trying to launch that's going to be really data intensive. So maybe we'll see it come back sometime in the future when they're trying to do a big launch.
Yeah, exactly. That makes sense for them going forward. So, well, I know another thing I want to touch on a bit on was recently I think at a similar investor conference, I know Sprint had mentioned potentially using some of their vast spectrum resources for backhaul. I know I think you touched a bit on that. I know you've been following kind of the backhaul space a lot there. What did you hear, I guess, from that, and what's the importance of that for Sprint?
Yeah, that was Tariq Robbiati, who's the CFO at Sprint, and I believe that was the Deutsche Bank investor, I guess, internet media telecom conference. And my favorite part of his about 35 minutes, which you can find online. You'll have to fill out a little lead form, but you can get the audio that way. But he talked at great length about how ridiculous it was that Sprint sponsored a NASCAR team and how we're over here hemorrhaging money and trying to cut $2.5 billion, but emblazoning our logo on a vehicle that will never return customers to us. That was very interesting. But yeah, he came to Sprint from Telestra, I believe, down in Australia. And he said that Sprint Spectrum portfolio was one of the big reasons that he took that job. And as we've discussed on this show before, they do have, I think, slightly over 200 megahertz of spectrum, it's huge. And a lot of it's that 2.5 gigahertz band spectrum. And so to as eloquently as possible, bring this full circle. We've talked a lot about how Sprint has this elaborate densification plan for network improvement, which would be small cell heavy. So what the new sort of line of thinking is that Sprint can save a lot of money on fiber deployment costs to these new small cells by utilizing microwave-based backhaul and running that through that 2.5 gigahertz spectrum. So that's a pretty interesting concept that I don't think we've really heard detailed as it relates to the Sprint network improvement plan. And when you consider, microwave backhaul in one scenario, you'd be kind of daisy chaining across towers for like long haul microwave backhaul. But in an urban metro scenario where you're using small cells to create density, it seems like it might work from sort of a hub and spoke perspective if you could avoid the daisy chaining and create these direct line of sights for the backhaul radios. That could be really interesting way to take advantage of the spectrum and cut a lot of the fiber deployment costs out of their bigger plans. So definitely keep an eye on that and keep the website updated as that kind of develops.
Yeah, that's a good point. I know Sprint, again, I think just in the 2.5 space alone, I think they've got around 150 megahertz in general across the country. So just alone there, and again, they've been trying to roll out some of the 2.5 to support their LTE network. And at the most, I think they've done maybe 40 megahertz at this point, a couple of carriers to do that. So they still have quite a bit of that 2.5 to use. I'm not sure, and I've talked to a few people about this, I'm not sure how there might be any concerns about interference issues. If you're running a commercial service and backhaul on the same spectrum band, that could be a bit of a challenge. Again, I'm not sure how that would work out, but again, I know Verizon or Sprint has a bit of a history with using the 2.5 and also using microwave backhaul back in the Clearwire days with John Saw, who's our current CTO. He did a lot of that back in the Clearwire days. So I'm guessing they've got some experience on how to do that. And you're right. Again, for a company that's trying to cut costs, if they could use spectrum that they already have to reduce, the need for fiber, which they have to pay for, that does seem to make sense. And again, they could save some money from that whole NASCAR sponsorship too. That'd be a big part for them as well. That was one of those things that they kind of inherited from the old Nextel days. Nextel signed a big deal with NASCAR to sponsor that, and when Sprint bought Nextel, that came along as part of the ride. And I think that deal, that sponsorship is eventually here coming to a close. So I'm guessing Sprint will be pulling away from that here too. So that'll save them some money as well. But yeah, the backhaul thing should be interesting for Sprint. And again, here we are. We're 3 months into the new year. I think we're still waiting to kind of hear more details from Sprint on what this new network densification plan is going to look like. They provided some high-level details on it, but the nuts and bolts part of it, I think we're still waiting to hear how they're going to pull this thing off. And it seems like the longer we go into this year, I think the more nervous investors might be getting, or at least the analyst community is getting about this too. So yeah, Sprint providing some insight into what they're going to do, any insight is a good thing, it seems, at this point, just to kind of calm nerves at least.
Yeah, and I mean, none of this has really been fully fleshed out in any of the reporting I've seen.
Yeah.
But what's SoftBank going to do in terms of this broadcast spectrum auction? I've seen a few pretty vague reports that suggest that SoftBank might actually attempt to buy some spectrum, and then what? I mean, if spectrum is Sprint's biggest asset, what is SoftBank going to do with more spectrum? I don't really understand what the
Yeah, I mean, that's true. I mean, I think people are still looking back at what Sprint setting out the 700 megahertz auction back in 2008. That was still kind of seen as a big mistake by Sprint, because again, they could definitely use some of that low band spectrum. That's probably hurt them over the past several years in trying to get better coverage. I mean, obviously T-Mobile has done a pretty good job using that 700 megahertz spectrum to really expand their reach, and it's a big part of their marketing. So yeah, obviously with SoftBank now rumored to be looking at the 600 megahertz auction, Sprint has said they're not going to participate directly, but that doesn't, obviously SoftBank can do it if they want to. So that'll be interesting. But yeah, I mean, the whole SoftBank Sprint dynamic right now is interesting. I mean, I've talked to a few people off the record on some stuff, and there's still some concern about the ongoing liquidity support from SoftBank for Sprint. And there's been talk about, at some point, Sprint is going to be a liquidation end game for them. I mean, who knows what will happen there. And again, this is still a lot of conjecture and kind of rumors that I'm hearing from people. But people are looking at SoftBank at some point, trying to at this point line up all their ducks in a row, so that once Sprint's eventual bankruptcy or whatever happens there plays out, that SoftBank is able to be near the front of the line in terms of getting paid out in that liquidation aspect. So, and again, that's all just stuff I've heard kind of on the side from people about this, and from a couple of people too. So yeah, I mean, the whole Sprint SoftBank dynamic. Again, there could still be a change if there's a change in the domestic, presidential situation coming up. I mean, if there's a new administration that's more favorable to some M&A activity, perhaps SoftBank comes back and tries to again buy out T-Mobile. I mean, DT is still not really throwing its 100% support behind T-Mobile for the long-term play, and so perhaps a year from now, if there's a new administration, perhaps SoftBank, if they're still interested in T-Mobile, could make another play for T-Mobile and combine the assets with Sprint again, and maybe make a move there. But it'd be interesting to see kind of how that works over the next 12 months or so too. So
yeah, I really don't know how we get from point A to point B, but I feel fairly certain that point B is not Masayoshi Son ending his legendary career with a huge failure on his hands.
It's a good point. Yes, I think you're right. I think we know step one and we know step three. Step two, that'll be the interesting thing that's going to happen over the next 12 months or so, or maybe longer, who knows. But yeah, that's going to be interesting to see how that does play out, and we'll see what happens there. But again, I know we've got the spectrum auctions coming up here pretty quickly, and I actually had a chance here recently to speak with Roger Rentner from Recon Analytics. We've talked with Roger before in the past here, but we talked a bit about that auction coming up and kind of get some insight, and kind of as we're getting here now a couple of weeks away, kind of where we are in terms of the players who are going to be in place for this, and maybe what we'll see from that auction. So let's take a look at that interview now. All right. Well, joining this week is Roger Rentner from Recon Analytics to talk a bit about what's happening in the carrier space. So hey, Roger, thanks again for joining us this week. We appreciate it.
It's my pleasure.
Great. Well, maybe to start off with, over the past week, I know there was some talk. There was a couple of investor conferences happening recently, and there was a lot of talk out of that about unlimited cellular data, and that's kind of been a hot topic in the industry for forever, it seems like. But I think AT&T came out and mentioned they have gotten some pretty good reception to their recently relaunched unlimited data plan tied to their DirecTV program. And then Verizon came out and kind of said that they're still have no interest at all in going with unlimited data. I guess as you look at kind of both of those, I guess, viewpoints of unlimited data, what's your take on where we are in terms of those views?
Well, when we look at unlimited data, it's a little bit, we're in the same discussion as we were, how many years ago? 10 years ago, about unlimited voice. and the dynamics are exactly the same.
Yeah.
For a consumer, unlimited voice or unlimited data means however much they want to use. For a wireless carrier, it means how much does the average use. And in the beginning, you had aggressive startups that offered unlimited voice as a differentiator because they didn't have a lot of load on the network. And if you have nobody on it, you can load it up with as much as you want to. Ultimately, they figured out that unlimited voice means 1,500 minutes. So the consumer bought an unlimited voice plan, and the carrier sold 1,500 minutes, because that's how it worked out.
Yep.
That's how they know how much money they have to get and to make it all ends meet. In unlimited data, we're a little bit in the same space. You have companies like Sprint that is still trying to look for a significant differentiator, and unlimited data is that. You have T-Mobile that used it as a huge differentiator, and now they are like weaning themselves off it by stealth price raises for unlimited data, as they've done, and become less and less dependent on it because their network is also loading up. That's why they need a lot of spectrum come the auction. Whereas Verizon grows and is still there and has taken that plunge and can't figure out yet what is that ultimate terminal data usage. We've seen a lot of analysis. I've done analysis, and it points right now to about 22 gigabytes when everything is said and done. Most of the consumers are way below that, and probably in about the 3 to 4 gig range, but it will eventually come up there. And these price plans are very sticky. You give somebody an unlimited plan from 10 years ago, and they still have it today. What is it? 7 million AT&T customers were still on unlimited before AT&T allowed them to do or allowed themselves to provide unlimited data again. When we look at AT&T, there's a little bit more at play, because when you look at AT&T's numbers, they are creating a lot of efficiency. Even though that they've lost postpaid subscribers, their profitability has gone up quarter after quarter. That points to significant efficiency gains that AT&T is realizing without talking that much about it. And I don't think a lot of people have actually paid attention to it. How can you make more money with less customers who are not spending more? The only way is really, really tight focus on cost and doing things not only cheaper but also smarter. And I can throw in T-Mobile. I think the big credit that they're not getting is how much efficiency they got out of their system. But that's a different conversation. Also, this is part of a bundle with DirecTV, where you're suddenly not only getting your profit from the wireless side, but you're also getting additional profit from the video side. And that is a game changer for them. And which allows them to offer unlimited data by combining the two offers and making it a lot more attractive, a lot more profitable, the overall bundle, but also then making it more efficient and cheaper to provide it.
And that's something
that's I think the gist of it.
And that's what they kind of brought up too, even during the conference, was that they're saying that their average customer who's taken this plan is spending $200 to $300 to $400 per month, because it is a bundle. They're bundling the stuff together, and it's just generating more revenue for them. And it seems like it's a good move again for AT&T, because kind of like you were saying, they've got such a diverse portfolio now of services, with a lot of them tapping into cellular, that it's probably smart for them at some point to start kind of offering an unlimited option, just because if a customer's signs up for AT&T and wants to add their IoT services, their digital life services, a lot of these things do tap into the cellular network. And customers want to be comfortable with, hey, if I'm going to keep adding these, I don't have to keep watching my bottom line or how much data I'm using, because it's hard to track those things. It seems like AT&T is really setting the stage for some pretty good growth down the line.
Yes, it's setting it. It has a really broad product portfolio, and it is utilizing every piece. When we look at Verizon's situation, they have wireless and they have Go 90.
Yeah.
And here in the Northeast, they have Fios. But that's not really a comparable offer, especially when you want to use Go 90, that they're now comping the data, or one division of Verizon is comping the data for you on Verizon Wireless. Okay. But it's not the value-generating bundling that AT&T is doing, and that allows them to go back to unlimited in that fashion. So it's a smart way to do this.
Yeah. And again, it's interesting that, again, because like Verizon was saying that they're not looking at doing it again, and like you said, they don't seem to have that breadth of portfolio to really tap into that value generation. So yeah, it does seem like Verizon is a bit. I don't want to say they're stuck, because obviously it's Verizon. They've got a lot of financial resources to do whatever they want, really. But at this point, they are sticking kind of to their guns and just holding out at this point.
And they're executing extremely well on what they have.
Yeah.
But I think it's the big highlight here is how competitive the industry is, not by everybody selling the same cookie, but you can have a chocolate cookie, you can have a gingerbread cookie, you can have a you name it cookie, and every carrier is offering a similar but also different experience, and is highlighting different things. And here we have not only price competition, but also competition when it comes to providing differentiated product sets.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's giving the consumer even more choice than they've ever had.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. And again, looking at AT&T, kind of the efficiency aspect of this as well. Even they were kind of talking about the fact that, hey, this is, like I said earlier, not just revenue generating, but it's also a sticky situation where customers are staying longer. Most of these new additions that they've announced, 2 million net additions, most of them are coming from their own customer base, which is a good way just to keep your customers. I mean, that's always been a tricky point with churn, is you lose your own customers. If you can keep those guys longer, that helps out the churn rate. And also your finances going down the road too. So another benefit there.
Yeah, and it's easier to upsell your own customers that have already been converted than to get new ones. But also we have to look at it not only in terms of with our wireless vision on, but also with the TV vision on.
Yeah.
Because when we look at comparable churn rates, Dish has 1.89% churn. That's more than most wireless carriers.
Yeah.
Sprint is now in that category.
Yeah.
The one with, that shows you that it pulls both ways.
Yeah.
Not only it addresses the people who have already DirecTV, but it addresses the people who have Dish, and it addresses the people with all the other cable providers. And you can provide this nationwide offer.
Yeah.
So it's...
Yeah, and again, with AT&T spending $48 billion to buy Dish, I'm guessing the investor community wants to see some sort of progress. Because again, the TV market is such a competitive market with a lot of people, cutting the cord and going to different ways of getting their content. AT&T's been somewhat aggressive in trying to at least reposition DirecTV, both through this combination here, but also through some over-the-top apps that they're going to come out with later on this year. They're having to be, I think, somewhat aggressive, at least publicly, to kind of let the investor community, it seems, know that, hey, this is not going to be business as usual for DirecTV. We're going to make DirecTV more dynamic, more compelling, a better attraction for customers.
Well, and I think where it ends up for AT&T is we'll provide you a TV solution regardless of the transport mechanism.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be cable. It doesn't have to be or physical cable. It doesn't have to be wireless. It doesn't have to be satellite. What it has to be is whatever you want to have. And they're setting this up for a solution for every transport. And even though that they like to provide it over their wireless or satellite connection, with some of the offers that they lined out, it can be very possible that you can get at home it on a Roku, and you can then watch it over a Fios connection or Comcast cable or a wireless connection from Sprint or T-Mobile.
Yeah,
the choice is yours.
Yeah.
And that makes it very, very interesting, very, very compelling, and very, very hard to compete against.
Yeah. Again, he's got a lot of resources, a lot of breadth of their innovation there, and it's showing they're being a lot more. It seems a lot more agile in what they're trying to do as well. I mean, they're definitely they're not being stuck. Not looking at just being stuck in one way of doing things. They're looking at various ways to do things. Which for a large company like that, it's traditionally been very, very hard to make changes like that. But it seems like AT&T's become a much more dynamic company. Obviously their software movements, using SDN and stuff have been a big part of what they're trying to do as well. So it does seem like they have definitely tried to change their legacy mentality to kind of a new world out there.
Oh yeah, and they have a lot of really good leaders. John Donovan does a lot behind the scenes to make this network more open, more capable, cheaper, at a higher quality, and make it ultimately connectable however the consumer wants it to connect and open it up to them. And I think the strategy of AT&T is extremely sound.
Yeah.
In a world that both bifurcates and aggregates and that converges at the same time.
Yep.
We have both these polar opposites of how consumers want to watch this and want to consume content, and they're setting themselves up to serve it however they want to be served. And now it comes down to execution.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting to see how they're doing it. Again, they've done a pretty big change, and obviously the network guys have gotten on the ball there. I mean, obviously we always looked at Verizon as being kind of the lead network guy, and obviously Verizon is still considered one of the leaders, innovators when it comes to network advances and enhancements there. But AT&T has definitely put themselves in that same ballpark with what they've been able to do on their network.
They have certainly closed the gap.
Yeah.
Verizon's probably still, at least on the wireless side, very, very capable, probably still has the best network. But everybody else, the distance has closed to, in many places where it is indistinguishable, but it's one stovepipe.
Yeah.
That they're really, really good. And AT&T has gone to a lot more and broadened really that, and it's smart.
Yeah, exactly. Well, change topics a little bit here. It's been a couple of weeks since the Mobile World Congress event. We haven't had a chance to talk really much since then, but I know one thing that came out of that show was a lot of talk about 5G, and obviously, whenever there's a new generational technology, that's always it gets headlines, and people get very excited about it.
Well, is there a new transformational technology?
That's the question, I guess, right? We don't know yet, really, right?
Well, exactly. Right now, we're in the phase of my G is bigger than your G. And all want to be at the forefront of technology, because what you have to look at is from the change from 2.3 to 3G and 3G to 4G. Verizon charged ahead, and really cemented its leadership with every technology change. And then over time, it diminished as the other carriers caught up. And right when they caught up, it was like the tortoise and the hare. Right when they caught up, there was another technology change, and Verizon leaped ahead.
Yeah,
I don't think, both AT&T and T-Mobile, and probably to a lesser extent Sprint, are like, well, we have seen this movie before. We know how it ends. It's like, we're not going to let this happen again, the fifth time.
Yeah.
And so they're very, very aggressive with it.
Yeah.
And I would say enact a lot with rhetoric, but right now, because what we have is we haven't even made up our mind yet if we need a new air technology or not. We had, GPRS or 1X RTT in 2G. We have wideband CDMA and EVDO in 3G. We had LTE for 4G. And if you listen to some people, we have LTE for 5G, which means we have 5G. Wow! Congratulations.
Let the commercials begin.
Didn't you expect that? Don't you feel faster already? So when we look at the standards, they're planning to do the 5G fixed standard for 2018.
Yeah.
Because there are Olympic Games in Korea.
Yep.
And Korea wants to show the world that they're the fastest, that they can do this. And so Samsung and I don't know which carrier, probably all of them, will work very closely together, do fixed wireless over 5G, will wow the athletes who are not partying and get to know each other and foster
international relations
and love between people in a cold environment, and said they watch then video streams on 5G fixed wireless. And then everybody says, after that, we'll do mobile wireless, which will get 19 or so, maybe 20. And that's when we have a standard.
Yeah.
So last time I checked, we were 2016. That was a few years off.
Yes.
So right now, when I look at 5G, who does what? Most 5G trials are using LTE in different spectrum bands and in larger channel sizes.
Mm-hmm.
Good job. If that's 5G, I'm terribly disappointed.
True. And that seems a bit the challenge, though, because you're right. I mean, it does seem like that everybody not everybody, a lot of people who are looking towards 5G, they are looking at LTE as being that air interface that we're going to continue to use. And so, like you said, it isn't much of a jump really to 5G, but there are also the parts where, they want to have better support for IoT and various things. And that's probably more of a software situation there where, we're looking at more virtualization as being part of that. So
when we look at there are basically three camps. And now they're more like two camps because Intel was always like, oh, we don't need another air technology. Huawei was somewhere in the middle. Qualcomm said, like, we need another one. Now Huawei came out and said, we need a new air technology.
Yeah.
Because, when you look at it, a new, better air technology gives you usually a 5x speed enhancement.
Yeah.
And if you want to have 100 times faster speed, it's much easier. You only need 20 times more sites, not 100 times more sites. Big difference. Especially as the big problem in wireless is not how to make cell sites bigger, but it's how to make cell sites smaller without interfering with each other.
Yep.
Because the closer you have that together, the more they see each other. In LTE, you seeing another cell site is an interferer.
Yep.
Not like in 3G where you could share it and it didn't interfere with each other.
Yeah.
So in LTE, to build this a lot tighter is a lot more challenging. So that to me means we need another technology. Now, there are things that you can do already today, and we talked about it earlier that AT&T was getting a lot more efficient.
Yeah.
They've rolled out software-defined network and network virtualization in the network. they've only reached 5-ish%.
Yep.
They plan to do 35%, but that's a definite building block for 5G. Is it a 5G network? No, but it's a building block for it, and it's already making progress today.
Yeah.
So it's these things that you can do today to prepare for 5G so that you have 10 times less latency, 100 times more speed and capacity, and 1,000 times more devices. So it's these things that we have to do at the core where it will work out. But the big thing is air interface, and
it's a bit of work there, yeah, and that's still something that needs to be kind of worked. And again, we're still years away. And I know, obviously, the carriers keep talking about their plans, and the vendors are talking about their plans as well. But you're right, we're still, like you said, it's 2016. We're still at least a couple years before the Olympics in Korea, which will be a bit of a point there, and then obviously 2020 beyond that. So,
and we still have 2 releases of LTE left.
Yes,
which will be very tempting not to call them 5G.
Well, some might say that those releases actually are the first steps to the real 4G, but that's a whole different. We want to get to the standards issue.
So we'll be half pregnant.
Yes.
For a while. Yeah. Okay.
That works too. But you're right. I mean, again, obviously you've been in the industry a long time, and we've seen. I've been here not as long as you have, but we've seen a lot of these same movies come through before, and we've seen these shows before, and yeah, it's interesting to kind of watch how it all plays out again and again, and hopefully we learn from our past. I don't want to say mistakes, but what's happened in the past. So,
well, the biggest issue will be when there will be consumer confusion.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought this was 5G. No, you're 5G. What is it?
That's the best part. To me, I love that. Confusion in the marketplace is fantastic. I love how carriers can't get out of their own way and make these mistakes, and it's just hilarious.
Over and over again. I'm looking forward to them explaining 5G right after they have explained to a consumer what a megabyte is.
Yeah. One of these days they'll know that. Yes, that's still a key there. But hey, one final topic before I let you go. We're a couple of weeks away now from the start of this 600 megahertz auction. I know we've talked about it in the past. I know this is a big topic for the industry. As we're looking now a couple weeks away, I think we're still waiting to see kind of the final participation list in terms of who's going to be taking place in the forward auction part of it. Some companies have already come out and said they're not going to be part of it. But I guess as we're looking towards this process, what's your general view of kind of where we are now, and what's your, if you were to predict the dollar amount, which is always, what do you see there?
Well,
who knows, right?
Who knows exactly? The thing is that historically speaking, with the exception of one auction, the results were always higher than what we expected.
Yes.
And the one auction was the H block, where
Dish came in, yeah.
Dish outbid Sprint, which was kind of hilarious, funny, sad, depends on the perspective. We have varying expectations here.
Yeah.
A former representative, while he was still a representative of the broadcaster, said 84 billion. I think that's out of reach. Citi just came out, I think, a few days ago with 43 billion, which basically means, we'll get the same thing as last time.
Yeah.
And we had, I think, Wells Fargo with 15 billion. I think it's somewhere between the 15 and the 40 billion. I don't think it will hit 40 billion. I think it will be probably 20s, low 30s. Because the makeup of this auction is significantly different to what we've ever had before.
Yeah.
We've never had actually 2 auctions as part of as one auction. Because you have the restricted part and the unrestricted part, which you never had before.
Yeah.
And when we look at how does an auction make money? It's like if you have more than one party with enough money to bid the other one up. T-Mobile said we have 10 billion plus and probably plus.
Yeah.
They said 10 billion. And they're in the unrestricted space where if the results get there, there will be 10 by 10 for probably T-Mobile and 5 by 5 by everybody else.
Yeah.
Now the question is, who has the money to bid up really T-Mobile out of their deep in their comfort zone?
Yeah.
It's not going to be Bluegrass Wireless, and it's not going to be one of the other little guys.
Yeah.
No, almost regardless where it is. And I doubt somebody like Rama, who are the former Google or whatever guys.
Yeah.
I don't think they will have 5, 8 billion, 10 billion to really push them. Dish, who knows? But Dish doubled their debt with the last one, and their investment analysts are already screaming.
Yeah.
You have AT&T, and then you have the other pool, AT&T and Verizon, with Verizon being lukewarm, of like, if it's 40 billion, we can split sites, and it's cheaper, way cheaper than that.
Yeah.
So there you don't really have that intense competition going on either, that you need to really to have a runaway success. And then who else will bid there? You know, I would rather bid in the set-aside spectrum that is uninterfered, unencumbered, no interference, than in the free one where I have to take it up with AT&T and Verizon. So I'd rather play in the kiddie pool that has cleaner water. You know, it's...
Yes, that is the perfect analogy, yes. And yeah, I mean, I think in general, yeah, looking at this auction, you know, it's such a different auction from what we've seen in the past. I mean, obviously, like you're saying, there's so many variables in this and the players involved. I mean, I always tend to kind of downplay the new rogue entrants who are going to come in, and, you know, they always talk the big talk about they're going to spend all this money and stuff and start their own carrier. We've seen historically that has never quite worked out quite right.
Exactly. You know. Because it's a difficult business, and you have to spend a lot of money. And if you have that amount of money, you can buy T-Mobile.
Yeah, there are better ways to make money off of that kind of money, or easier ways than becoming a wireless carrier. I mean, if you've got $10 billion in your pocket somehow, and if you want to have $20 billion in your pocket, you don't become a wireless carrier. You do something else. There's an easier way to become a 20 billionaire than a 10 billionaire.
Because it's such a competitive industry, everybody has it. You know, I've talked about it before. You know, every handset carrier now offers the customers from another carrier $650 to switch because it's so competitive. Yeah. If that would have existed when there was Cricket and Leap, they would have never gotten off the ground.
Yep.
But it just shows you that hyper-competitiveness that makes it very hard, because when there's hyper-competitiveness, there are winners and losers. And if there are not winners and losers, then you don't have a competitive market.
Yeah.
And, you know, so it's...
Yeah, we'll see. And again, we're coming off that auction last year that generated all that money. And obviously the carriers, you know, they obviously they've got a lot of funds, but they have not an unlimited amount of funds. So at some point they're going to stop spending. Verizon's kind of said that. So
Verizon spent $100 billion on getting its half of Verizon Wireless.
That's right. That's right.
AT&T spent $50 billion on DirecTV, plus all the other, you know, smaller auction funds. But that's each of them spent $70, $80 billion, $100 and something billion. Money doesn't grow on trees.
Yeah, even for wireless carriers. Yeah,
even for wireless carriers.
Yeah.
And so that puts a constraint there, because Wall Street is looking at it of like, how much debt is over leveraged?
Yeah.
Sprint can sing a tale about that, what it means to be over leveraged. It's a cautionary tale for everybody else.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. It's always hard. I mean, it's always, Sprint's always out there as a tale for somebody else to be aware of. So
you can learn a lot from Sprint.
That's right. Well, hey, Roger, again, appreciate the time on these. Obviously, a lot going on in the wireless space. The auctions will be fun to watch. Obviously, 5G is always exciting as well. That'll be a multi-year process, but I'm sure we'll talk about these topics again going forward.
Sure.
But hey, definitely appreciate the time today. Thanks so much for that again. Well, that'll do it for the Fixed Carrier app. Make sure to check us out again next week for a new episode. Thanks for watching.